Clayton Narveson was a private first class in the United States Marine Corps and served as a gunner in the South Pacific. He witnessed the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your service in World War II, and if you'd like to add any information that isn't included in the questions, please feel free to do that. During World War II, which branch of service did you serve?
U.S. Marines.
What was your rank?
Private first class.
Where did you serve?
In the South Pacific.
Why did you pick the branch of service you joined?
Well, right at Pearl Harbor was a time in the history of this country which has been no other. Everybody wanted to jump in and serve. My brother, one of my brothers, was in the Marine Corps already, and I decided that I wanted to be a part of the Marines, so I volunteered in 1942.
Where did you do your basic training?
San Diego, 1942.
What do you remember most about it?
Oh boy, I'll tell you. During the Depression, we were a very poor, large family. We did not have much food. I was very thin. One thing we all had was strong legs. People who came out of the Depression have good legs. Even to this day, my legs are good because I always have walked all my life. When I graduated from high school, I weighed 125 and I was 5'5". After 8 weeks of boot camp, I was 5'10" and I weighed 160 pounds. What do I remember about? Two things: discipline and great food. The marching didn't hurt me because I could walk 20 miles. So two things: great Marine Corps food and discipline.
What was your main job or assignment during the war?
I was a gunner, what's called a gunner on the 81 millimeter mortars. I don't know if you know what a mortar is, Ian, but it's an artillery shell. It's loaded by dropping it in a tube and it shoots out and it arcs and it drops down. It's a type of artillery, and that's what I did. They assigned me that when I went overseas.
Did you see combat?
Yes. I was with the 2nd Marine Division. One of the regiment I was with, Ian, was the 6th Marines. We served, I was on Tarawa, Tarawa. It's in the Gilbert Islands, and the Japanese held it, and we took it from them. Following that, I went back to New Zealand for training, and when we boarded ship in May of 1944 at Pearl Harbor, 5 LSTs, I don't know if you know it, landing ship tank. They carry the troops and tanks into the beach. They were together at Pearl Harbor and they blew up all at one time. And I got injured on that and went into the hospital at Pearl Harbor. And I missed the invasion with my division at Saipan and Tinian. And when they came back from there, I had got out of the hospital, I'd recovered, and they assigned me to the 4th Marine Division. And I was with the Marine Division as a gunner, and then we took off for Iwo Jima. We left in January of 1945, and the invasion was the 19th of February, 1945. And I was on that island about 30 days. I was with the 23rd Regiment of the 4th Marine Division.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
I think the most memorable would be when the flag went up on Iwo Jima. I was quite close. My squad was probably a block and a half away, if you in terms of footage. It was on the 5th day of the invasion, and I was a gunner, and one of my ammunition carriers shouted at me, "Clayton, look towards Mount Suribachi." And I turned around and looked, and I could see among the shelling, when there's a lot of shelling going on, my boy, there's just everything in the air. Through it all, I could see the red part of the flag, and you have to understand, Ian, that was a different day than we have today. People were very patriotic in those days. I grew up with a flag in front of my house. My father was very poor. We had a large family, but we had a flag. People had flags. We were a very patriotic nation, more so than we are now, Ian. And the flag meant something. If you look at any pictures of World War II, any movies, one thing you'll note that whenever there's a flag goes up, the troops stand at attention and people stand at attention. And it's very meaningful because it represents the great democracy that the United States was and has become. And that day, I don't think I shed any tears, but I have since many times, because it was a time of acceleration. And when that happened, Ian, all the ships in the harbor, the destroyers and the cruisers, they let go with their bells, because officers aboard ship can look through there and they saw the mountain and they could see the flag. And the bells went off for about 10 minutes. And it was a noise around Iwo Jima. And that's a part of me that I'll never forget, you know. It's indented in my memory what that meant. And the worst memorial part of, you say, a couple of the most memorial or most meaningful would be the loss of my friends. We didn't stay on the island long enough to bury them like we did at Tarawa. I helped bury Marines. But at Iwo Jima, we had people come that were on the island at that time that did the burial. But it's a sad thing. I know when I go on Wednesday, when I go up to Washington, D.C., I know it's going to affect me. It can't help it, because your memory floods back on you. It's like soldiers in the Civil War when they visited the burial grounds of the dead soldiers. That always affected them, whether it was the North or whether it was the Confederacy. And that's just a part of the history of mankind. That is a part of you. You're fighting for something. And when you lose men next to you, it's not only a sad thing, it's a very historical thing in a way. And as a result, that has also become a part of me too, to know who those guys were. And they're with you one day and gone the next.
Were you ever a prisoner of war?
No.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Citations, 2 citations, one for the Battle of Tarawa. Each one of us got one, and one for the Battle of Iwo Jima. We all got one. The Marines did. I am one of 6 children in our family, Ian. 6 boys and 1 girl. All 6 of us were in the service. All 6 of us were overseas. All 6 of us, by the grace of God, came home. That's quite a remarkable thing.
Did you sustain any serious injuries?
Only when the ship blew up. It's the only time. I got a lot of metal in my back. Where it come from, they don't know, but that's why I was in the hospital. But actually in battle, I did not get injured.
How often were you able to communicate with your family?
I would write an email. We had email free of charge, or 1-cent stamp. You could send a letter. I wrote to my mother about once every 3 or 4 weeks. I had no girlfriend at the time. Shucks. Some of the guys were lucky enough to have a girlfriend, but I got out of high school without a girlfriend. I don't know how that happened, because I like girls, but I didn't have one. So I wrote to my mom and to a couple of friends and my Lutheran pastor. I wrote him once every 2 months. That's about it.
How did you feel when you got letters from home?
Oh, very good. You look forward to mail call. I still do. When I go out and get the mail today and my wife's sitting in there and I holler, mail call, well, that was a term we had overseas. But more than mail, I liked getting cookies and candy. Because, Ian, I'm a cookie freak and I'm a candy freak. I'm 84 years old. And if I would eat candy every day if a doctor would let me. Or my wife would let me. She's always watching me. I used to steal a lot of candy at the house. She puts it away from me. I don't get to steal it anymore.
What was the food like?
Oh, the Marine Corps' got good food. Navy has good food, and the Marine Corps has good food. Ian, I gained in 8 weeks from 125 pounds to 160 pounds. That's a lot of weight, young man. But you must remember part of it was because during the Depression, we did not have a lot of food. The federal government fed us for 3 years following the stock market crash in October 1929. And as a result, I was very slim. So when I got into the Marine Corps, I never turned anything down. And the meal was very good, Ian. And to this day it is. I talk to Marines who have been in Iraq and are home now, or in the service in the 70s and 80s and 90s. The Marine Corps still has good food. It's good, solid food.
Would you tell me about any particularly humorous event that happened to you or someone you know?
Boy, I'm having a hard time with that, Ian. I have a lot of things overseas. One of the things in New Zealand, you go downtown, if you get the Marine Corps doesn't give you many furloughs, I'll tell you, but they give you, all day Saturday once in a while. I'd go down with 2, 3 of my buddies, and I'd go to the store with candy, let's see it candy. I'd go in and they'd only let me have 2 pieces. And I used to get upset about that. So I'd steal some from my buddies, they'd get some, they didn't like candy, and I'd get it. I'm a candy freak. I'm a sugar freak. I'm a cake freak. I love sweets, Ian, and I always have. In fact, my wife is making a chocolate cake right today. But I can't think of, there's got to be a lot of humorous ones overseas. Eleanor Roosevelt was the wife of the President of the United States, and she visited all over the country, all over the world during World War II. She was the ears and eyes of her husband, who was crippled up. He had osteoarthritis. He had polio. But she was there, and I got to talk to her, and there was a lot of anecdotes and jokes told. Bob Hope came out. That was a time of laughter. Funny things after you come in from the field and your training. We'd come in from the field around 4:30 and take a shower and then have a lot of laughter. But I can't think of any. I think I can think of some sad times when Glenn Miller, the orchestra leader, who I admired so much, because I grew up in the dance band era. When he was missing, I cried. When Roosevelt, I was standing in Chow Line, Pearl Harbor, 8 in the morning, and there was a newspaper that told about Franklin Roosevelt dying. Well, he was the only president any of us ever knew, because we all grew up with Roosevelt. And that was a very sad time. I remember shedding some tears on that one. I'm trying to think of some times where extra laughter, it may come to me. If it comes at midnight, I won't call you, Ian. You'd appreciate that.
What did you think of your fellow officers or soldiers?
Marines are a very tight-knit unit. The Marine Corps has always been, it's called Semper Fidelis, or Semper Fi. That means always faithful. Marines always stick up for one another, and you watch out for one another. It's called esprit de corps. And to this day, it's that way. The saying is, once a Marine, always a Marine, and I think that's true. Now, you have a great spirit de corps with a lot of organizations. Air Force, submariners who served among the submarines, they are a very close bond. Men that flew in the Royal Air Force, RAF, that's a close bond. There are a great many of them, but I think that the bond between Marines is stronger than you'll find among so many groups.
Did you keep a personal journal or diary?
No, I did not. I have this I got in 1943 at Pearl Harbor, and it has pictures of some of my buddies and a few of them of me. And I've kept that all these years. I got that in 1943. My, oh my, that's a long time ago. I brought it along in case when this is done, if I can show you a picture of my family, some of my buddies, and a picture of myself, a couple of pictures in here. If you wish to see them, I would show them to you.
What do you recall about the day the war ended?
Oh, I was in Jacksonville, Florida. After Iwo Jima, I had enough time overseas with the 4th Division. They sent me home for a 30-day furlough. After the 30-day furlough, I went down to Jacksonville, Florida, and I was there when the war ended. Oh man, that was a time. Singing, dancing, shouting, drinking a beer, hugging, dancing. Oh my, it was a time and no other time in history would compare with it, because World War II was the only event in the history of all mankind that involved the whole world and our whole nation. Because what you maybe don't know, Ian, is that although there were 15 million of us in the service, people on the home front were just as energetic about the war as we were. Mothers and fathers, they collected all the metal stuff that they put out by the curb. Our sisters and mothers went in and became part of the defense effort. Every B-29 bomber that came off the assembly line, half of the people who put that out were women. Tanks, guns, ammunition, all the things that are put out for the war, women, half of them were the ones who put that out. So you see, it involved not only the whole world, but a whole country. It involved daughters, mothers. It was a unique event in the history of mankind. I don't think any war of our history, Ian, when you get a little older and you get into history, these words that I'm giving you now may come back to you. It involved all of our families every family. My father had 6 stars in the window of our house, and he was so proud. He had an old 1928 car, but he had 6 stars on the side windows of our old car when he would go downtown. And I grew up in Minnesota, in a smaller town. Anything else that you wanted to?
What do you remember most about the day you went home?
When I got out, the day I got out, well, I was going with a girl from South Carolina. I met her in Florida. She was in the Waves. That's the women's organization. And I went home to meet her mom and dad. Then I took the train, came back to Minnesota. But it was a happy time. All during 1945, after the war was over, was a happy time. 46 was a happy time. The years following the war were happy times. For many reasons, Ian. For many reasons.
Tell me about your close friendships while in the service.
I went in with Minnesota and North Dakota kids. When you went in the Marine Corps and the Navy, you were kept together, and you were by your last name, whatever your letter was, is the way they divided you. I went M's, N's, O, P's out of boot camp, went to the 6th Marines. That's the way they did it. You didn't have a choice. See, we were scrambling to get into the war. That boot camp was only 8 weeks. They cut it down for us and got us overseas right away because we were fighting Germany and Japan and Italy, all 3. So it was a rush time. It was, in one sense of the word, Ian, it was a romantic time. People were rushing around, getting married sometimes, but seeing loved ones off, take it off early, take it off wherever you went to. And 15.5 million of our men and women went in the service. Of that amount, 300,000 were women. And a little statistic I'll give you, Ian, you don't find in the books, is in 1943 and 44, our bombers and our fighter planes that were flown from this country to North Africa and to England were flown by girls, 2nd lieutenants. They could fly as good as men. Women can fly just as good as men. And they proved it. And there were 300,000 women in the service. And I speak up for them because they're sometimes called second-class citizens when the service is concerned. Thank God they don't do it anymore. Girls serve just like men do. I don't think that men or girls should be on the front line because that's too heavy. God made man and woman. He didn't make Adam and Bob. He made a man and a woman. And there is a difference in the body structure. But women can do just what a man can do, except for heft, for weight, muscle, structure. And women have proved that. There are women in Iraq right now.
What did you go on to do as a career after the war?
The GI Bill of Rights, Ian, was passed by Congress, 1944. I never thought I would get to go to college, but I dreamed of it overseas. I wanted to be a lawyer more than anything else. And when that passed, I knew I could, and I came out of the service, I was going to be one. Well, I did. 6 years, I went to college. I became a lawyer in Minnesota. And I practiced law 20 years until such time as my wife's health drove me to California. So I moved my family to California in 1972. And I became a lawyer because the government paid my tuition, it paid my books, and $50 a month. And Ian, that's a pretty nice country that'll do that. You don't find that in many countries, that they do that for their... To this day, we have the GI Bill for people in the service. I think it's one of the great things that Congress has passed. Like I said, it paid my book's tuition for 5 calendar years, or 6 school years. It's a pretty wonderful thing, Ian, when you think of it, isn't it?
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
Oh, I'm sure it does in many ways. I'm a war buff. I've read nearly everything on the Civil War and World War II. At one time, I had 800 volumes in my house. Because moving from place to place, they are heavy and they cost money. When you put them into boxes, Ian, my wife got after me a long time ago. When I moved to California, we took all 800. And it was the last time. And I got out there, I gave them away to friends in the library. And has it influenced me? Oh, sure, being in the service and my reading of the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. I like to read about the wars of the Bible. I like that. I'm a war buff. I'm a reader, Ian. When you get older, don't be afraid to read. Reading is one of the great things you can do. I don't know if you read now, but if you don't, you better learn, because there's happiness and enjoyment, and you're going to learn. Do you read, Ian? No. You learn. Listen to your mom. My mother used to say, Clayton, do what you're told and be on time. So, Ian, you too, I'm going to tell you that. You be on time when your mother, and do what your mother tells you. Do what you're told. So, excuse me for being an old timer, but that's a part of my body. I gotta tell you that.
He does pretty well.
Does he? Okay.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Oh, my whole life. It's just affect my way of thinking. It's a way of thinking. And when you're married, it's a way of thinking. For the past 10 years, what I gave you, I've been talking to high schools in Albuquerque and then now here, including this school, the seniors and juniors, about the Great Depression and World War II. I do it because it's not in the textbooks anymore. It's a tragedy. Our kids are not learning history, and they're not learning about the Great Depression, which is a part of our country because of what the Depression did to this country. And as you read a little history, Ian, you'll read about the Great Depression. Had there been no depression in this war, in this country, 1929, Adolf Hitler would have never come to power, Ian. He used the depression of the unemployed in Germany. Unemployment in Germany was 40%, around 40% in 1930 and 31. Hitler used that as a springboard to gain power. But war and all of its manifestations is a part of history. It's a part of me. It's a part of our country.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't talked about in this interview?
Oh, there's a lot of things, Ian, that I talk to the kids in high school about. Discipline. The Marine Corps stands for discipline. It's a part of your life. But I had discipline as a boy. My whole family had discipline. There's so much in what this country stands for. The most majestic ideas of history formulate the part of this country that stands for the great democracy that we are. There are over 30 countries who have become democracies based on our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. Nowhere in history except in the Bible, the Ten Commandments, would you find what we stand for in this country? So when people try to tear this country down, Ian, I'm one of those that fight. My wife is that way. We don't like what we see in this world right now. We don't like what we see in this country. This country's being torn apart, Ian. You're not quite old enough to understand what I'm driving at. You will someday. But what this country stands for, I think it's the most benevolent, historical, and great country that we are. And when you get older, you will understand the history of all mankind. We've always had wars, Ian, and I'm afraid to say it, we'll always have wars from the dawn of civilization. The first war, I believe, was Cain killed his brother Abel. From that day on, we've had wars. What this country stands for, Ian, is, as you get through your history classes, you'll understand more of what I'm talking about. Why this country was formed and what it stands for. The history of slavery. The history of slavery is a blot on the history of this country and the world, and that has been from day one. We had slavery before the Romans. We had slavery in the Old Testament. Some of the civilizations that are best known and long living, there was slavery connected with them. There's always been, sorry to say. But all in all, Ian, I'm an optimist. I like to look at the good side of something and not the bad side. If there's a pail of water with half full, I like to say it's half full rather than say it's half empty. It's your attitude, what your attitude is like. But that comes from, my attitudes come from my mother and father. We were raised during the Depression by a good father and a good mother. I cherish my father. He had a Bible by his side all the time. The things he taught us. My family now is gone. My mom and dad are gone. Of the 7 children, there are only 2 of us alive, 1 in Minneapolis and myself. Historically, there are so many things that I could mention, but I don't have time here for all of it, Ian. If you have a special question, maybe I can help you with it.
Why don't we take some quick shots of the photos, because we got another appointment.
Oh, have you?
Yes, sir. But
There's a gentleman sitting over there.
okay.
Why don't I just show you a picture of my...
Okay. What would you like to? Who is that?
That's myself, my brother, and 4 friends of mine who were in the Marine Corps. I'll show you a picture of in my 4th Marine Division uniform.
Yeah, so that's Pearl Harbor.
Yep.
Okay.
There,
What year was this?
1945.
Let me focus in on that a little bit better. And what's her name?
Helen Newton.
Hmm.
2 of my brothers.
That's great.